This is a video to help you think about writing your museum paper for Art 110. Okay, so your paper is going to have a thesis. This is an idea about the artwork supported entirely with visual evidence. It will be 700 to 750 words. It doesn't need any kind of research outside of what we're doing in class or perhaps the label of the object at the museum. You must submit it on Canvas as a Word document. All right, there's basically 3 stages of this assignment. The first one is planning your visit to the museum. I'm going to talk about that a little more, but here's a note. If visiting the museum is impossible for you, you need to let me know as soon as possible and we'll come up with an alternative. More on that to come. Stage 2 is writing your rough copy. This will include a photograph of you with the object, and then after looking at the revisions that I suggest to you, you will write a final copy. All right, planning your visit. I want you to go to the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology at the University of Pennsylvania. Usually it's just called the Penn Museum. Here it is. You can see it's right across the street from Franklin Field. So if you ran track when you were in high school, this is where the Penn relays are. It's right across the street. The best way to do this really is to take public transportation. The regional rail line stops right here at the University City stop, and then all you do is you walk over and you go in. If you can't do the regional rail line, you can drive, and if you're very lucky, you can find street parking. Otherwise, you could do the parking garage. The parking garage is super expensive. It's like $25. So I would really recommend doing public transportation. It will really lower your cost. So bring your ID with you because student admission is less. If you have an access card, it's only $2. If you're active military personnel, it's free. Go online ahead of time to look at the schedule, and if there's any changes because of holidays or whatever, that will be noted on the website. So here's the website. I also recommend going here ahead of time just to check out the objects that are on the list. So you go to the Collections tab, and then put in the title of one of the works. So here I'm suggesting the Benghazi Aphrodite. And it'll pop up and look, it says it's on display. You click on it, and it gives you all sorts of information about it. This will help you to find it in the gallery. Another thing that's really helpful is if you click on its current location, it brings up a map of the museum and it shows you where it is in the museum. So this will help you to find this. I would do this for each of the 5 objects that I put on the list of acceptable works of art, because this will help you ahead of time to know what you're looking for and to maybe even have an idea about which object you find to be the most interesting. Now, I choose these objects on purpose because they relate to our course content, because I find them to be really dynamic, engaging objects that produce good papers, but I'm open to you choosing something else. However, I would say choose it ahead of time and send me an email to make sure it's right. Like, this museum has work from all over the world, but you can't write a paper for this Western European survey class about art from China just because we haven't covered that at all. It has to be something that's based on what we've covered in our class. Okay, so along those lines, if you absolutely cannot get to the museum, I understand, and there is an alternative. You may select an object from the online collection of either the Metropolitan Museum of Art or the Getty Collection. However, again, the work must be from one of the Art 110 stylistic periods, from the Roman Imperial period or earlier, and you have to email me your selection for my approval. Alright, so now that you've chosen your object, you need to plan to spend an uncomfortable amount of time looking at it. I would say 30 minutes. Set your timer on your phone and just sit there and look at it. Take notes, maybe sketch the object. If you're drawing a blank, start off by simply describing what you see. So, for example, Aphrodite is naked. Her legs are cut off. She's holding her hair. Just basic stuff. You could also bring the Principles and Elements of Design handout with you and use that to think about all of the different things happening within the object. But it's really important to take notes because this is basically how you're going to write your paper based on these notes that you take. So when you are trying to come up with your thesis, look at your notes and think about, is there some particular visual element that I return to over and over again in this object? And then think, why is this so captivating for me? What visually about it is so engaging? And what does it do for the object? What might it suggest for the overall meaning of the work? So for the Benghazi Aphrodite, I find a lot of students write about whether she's aware that she's being looked at or not. So, and this really, it's subjective. It depends on how you're interpreting the object. Is she making eye contact with you, or is she looking down and she's unaware that you're watching? It really changes it, because if she's making eye contact with you, then this becomes really erotic, right? However, if she doesn't know that you're there, then like you're kind of this creepy voyeur. So it changes things, and it's all based on how you're going to interpret the shift of her chin, the way that she's moving her body, the way her eyes are either looking at you or not looking at you. All right. So once you have determined these things, use your notes as the data bank to prove your point. So, like for example, if you say that she's looking at you, you want to describe what leads you to that. So it might be the gentle tilt of her head. You wouldn't just say she looks like she's looking at you. It's like, well, what's your evidence for that? You need to use the object as your evidence. As you think about your visual analysis, I would also encourage you to consider inserting a comparison. Many of the works at the museum are comparable to objects we study in class. Think about how your thesis could be supported with comparative evidence from a similar work of art. Okay, so your rough copy needs to have documentation of your visit, i.e., a selfie of you with the object, basically. I'm going to give you a lot of feedback on your rough copy. I want it to be as a Word document so that I can use the track changes function, because I find this is the most straightforward way to communicate these revisions with you. So, as you write your final copy, take my feedback to heart. It should be significantly revised from your rough copy. That's largely why I do the rough copy, because I find most students have never done a paper like this before, and it's hard to write a visual analysis paper when you've never done it. So that's why I give you a lot of feedback, because I'm hoping that you can write a really strong final copy. You also need to submit it on time. I deduct 5 points per day for late final copies. All right, so this grading is based on a rubric that you'll be seeing all semester. Each of these 4 elements are worth 25% of the grade. So the thesis, you should present an idea about the object that's driven by your visual analysis of this specific work. And A is going to present an idea about how these visual choices influence the overall meaning and significance of the work, and it usually appears in the first paragraph. Stylistic analysis, you should have specific descriptions of the artwork. Saying that it's beautiful or anguished or luxurious is not enough. You need to describe the exact features that lead you to these conclusions. Your paper should be clearly organized with a thesis that develops across the paper with strategic, argument-driven topic sentences. And then finally, your presentation of the paper should have no grammar or spelling errors, and A's will exhibit eloquence. Passive voice. This is something you're going to hear me say all semester, but basically it's when you take a nice verb like to squeeze and you modify it with to be. So here, Aphrodite is squeezing her hair. That is overly wordy, and it kind of just waters down the entire thing. Here, this is good. Aphrodite squeezes her hair. So it's a subtle change, but it really changes the entire tenor of your writing. If you need help, post a question to the Questions About the Museum Paper Forum. Send me a thesis idea. Call me. We can talk. We can Skype. We can talk in my office hours. Send me an outline. Send me a sample paragraph. And again, if you can't make it to the museum, write me. We'll figure it out. But you need to do it sooner than later so that you can choose the right object and do a good job on this assignment. Anyway, that's all. Thanks so much.